Chapter 1. The Rain and the Root Canal. The rain came down hard over Mumbai, relentless and cold, turning the streets into rivers and the air into mist. Inside the sterilized silence of Malhotra Dental Care, Dr. Aryan Malhotra stared at the gray skyline through his floor-length window, arms folded tightly across his chest. Thunder rolled in the distance. Even with the usual buzz of sterilizers and the occasional hum of the reception phone, the silence in the clinic felt unusually heavy. It had been a slow morning. 2 patients had cancelled due to the storm. Another one, a root canal case, had rescheduled, claiming bad vibes on the roads. Aryan didn't blame them. Mumbai rains weren't just an inconvenience, they were war. He checked his watch. 11:02 a.m. His next patient was due now. As if on cue, the glass door to his clinic creaked open. The receptionist, Meenal, popped her head into his cabin. "Sir, walk-in patient, emergency case, severe toothache." Aryan nodded. "Send them in." A moment later, she walked in, and the entire atmosphere shifted. Dripping from head to toe, strands of wet hair clinging to her cheeks, wearing a crumpled blue kurti and jeans soaked to the skin, she looked both exhausted and radiant. She had one hand pressed tightly against her jaw, her expression tense. But her eyes, deep, chestnut brown and wide, met his with something he hadn't seen in a long time. Pain, vulnerability, and something else. Defiance. "I'm so sorry to just walk in," she said, her voice tight from the ache. "I tried calling, but—" "It's fine," Aryan said, motioning toward the dental chair. "You're here. That's what matters." She hesitated only a second before sinking into the chair. As she leaned back, Aryan washed his hands, pulled on his gloves, and adjusted his mask. "What's your name?" he asked. Avni Mayer." She winced again and turned her head toward him. "I think it's my lower molar, left side." Aryan's fingers were precise, efficient, but gentle as he began examining her. She tasted faintly of rain and mint gum, probably trying to mask the pain. But he could see the swelling. Infection. "You need a root canal," he said softly after a moment. "ASAP, the infection's already begun spreading." Avni groaned. "Of course. Today of all days. Can you do it now? Do you have any medical conditions, allergies?" "Nope, just horrible luck." A flicker of a smile touched his lips, hidden behind his mask. He gestured to Meenal to begin prepping the anesthesia. Avni bit her lip, eyes wide with apprehension. "Hey," Aryan said, lowering his tone as he moved closer. "You're in good hands. It won't hurt. Not as much as you think." She stared at him for a second. "You have surgeon's eyes." "What does that mean?" They don't flinch. "Like you've seen everything and nothing surprises you anymore." For a brief second, Aryan's hand froze in midair. A shard of something, memory, pain, flashed across his eyes, but it vanished quickly. "I guess that's one way to describe it," he said, injecting the local anesthetic with practiced ease. Minutes passed. The storm raged outside as Aryan worked, the drill whirring softly. Avni was quiet, barely blinking, her eyes glued to the ceiling. Occasionally their gazes met, and even though neither of them spoke, something settled in the silence between them. An unspoken curiosity, a fragile trust. 45 minutes later, Orion was done. The infection was cleaned, the tooth sealed temporarily. A full root canal session would take at least 1 or 2 more sittings, he explained. Avni sat up slowly, still numb, dabbing her lips with a tissue. "You okay?" he asked, peeling off his gloves. "Yeah, actually, more than okay. That was the gentlest dental torture I've ever had." He chuckled under his breath. I'll take that as a compliment. She studied him for a second. Do you ever smile, Dr. Malhotra? I just did, internally. I'll believe it when I see it. As she walked out of the cabin, Meenal handed her the prescription and appointment card. Come back Thursday, Aryan called after her. Avni paused at the door, hand on the knob, then turned. If I don't drown in the rain first. Aryan looked at her seriously for a moment. Then I'll come find you. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, part surprised, part amused. I'll hold you to that. Then she was gone, her wet silhouette vanishing into the gray light. Aryan stood there for a long time, staring at the now closed door. Something about her lingered, not just the scent of her shampoo or the impression on the chair, but the way she'd looked at him, seen him, as though his silence didn't scare her, as though she'd been searching for silence herself. That night, Aryan stayed late at the clinic, reviewing patient files and organizing equipment. But his thoughts kept drifting. Back to her, Avni Mehra. It wasn't just her pain that had unsettled him. It was her presence, her energy, like she was carrying more than just a toothache, like she was running from something. He didn't know it yet, but so was he. And soon, their paths would become entangled in ways neither of them could predict. Chapter 2: Echoes in the Silence. The next morning arrived with reluctant sunlight. The rain had lessened to a quiet drizzle, leaving the city soaked and shining like a half-forgotten memory. Aryan stood at his balcony, coffee in hand, watching the streets below as his neighborhood stirred back to life. It should have felt like just another day. Same morning routine, same silence. But it didn't. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Avni. There had been something electric in the way she looked at him, like she wasn't afraid to see past the mask. That was rare. Most people saw the white coat, the credentials, the calm demeanor, and left it at that. But Avni, she had looked deeper, like she knew he wasn't just quiet, he was hiding. He sipped his coffee and shook his head. This was dangerous. Emotional entanglements blurred judgment, especially with patients. He'd learned that the hard way. Still, when his phone buzzed and a message from the clinic app showed Avni Mehra confirmed for Thursday, 4:00 p.m., he felt something stir in his chest. Meanwhile, in a small, cluttered apartment on the other side of the city, Avni sat cross-legged on her bed, grading papers and trying to ignore the dull ache that remained in her jaw. It wasn't just the tooth that hurt. It was everything else. A photo frame face down on her bedside table. She hadn't had the courage to lift it in months. Not since he left. Not since trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford. She glanced at the prescription Aryan had given her. His handwriting was precise, just like his hands. He had been quiet, but not cold. In fact, she felt safer in his clinic than she had in a long time anywhere else. Safe. That was something she hadn't felt in years. Don't do this, Avni, she muttered to herself, pushing the thoughts away. He's your dentist, not a fantasy. Still, her fingers lingered just a second too long on his name, written across the top of the paper. 3 days later, Thursday, 3:58 p.m. Aryan's clinic was calm, unusually so for a weekday evening. A soft instrumental playlist played in the background, the kind that was meant to relax nervous patients. He'd checked Avni's file 3 times, not because he had to, just because he couldn't help it. At exactly 4:00 p.m., the door opened. She stepped in, this time dry, confident, with a fresh breeze of jasmine perfume that followed her. She wore a maroon kurta and black jeans, hair pinned loosely behind one ear. "You're punctual," he said, holding the door open to his cabin. "I'm always punctual, academic habit," she replied with a small smile as she took the seat. You're in luck, he said, adjusting his gloves. Today's session will be less painful. Great, then I can ask questions. He looked at her sideways. You came to interrogate your dentist? Maybe, she shrugged playfully. You don't talk much. I'm curious. I let my work speak. Do you ever go out, like, beyond the clinic? Arian paused mid-mouth. Not much. No friends? Few. Selective. Avni tilted her head. Family? There it was. A wall. His eyes darkened just enough for her to notice. He didn't respond. I'm sorry, she said softly. That was too personal. He glanced at her, and something in his face softened. It's okay, you weren't the first to ask, just the first I wanted to answer. And not much left to answer for, he said cryptically, and lowered the dental chair. Now open up, Professor. Avni obeyed with a smirk. Bossy, I like it. Ariane didn't respond, but his gloved fingers were gentle, his touch careful as he worked. The space between them buzzed with unsaid words. The procedure took about 35 minutes. Avni barely flinched. The tension in her body eased as the second phase of the root canal ended. When it was over, she sat up, dabbing her mouth. You're good, she said. Scary good. I try. She reached for her bag, hesitating. Do you ever have coffee with patients? Arian blinked, caught off guard. Is that allowed? Don't know. That's why I'm asking. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned against the counter and studied her. There was a boldness in her voice, but vulnerability in her eyes. She wasn't asking just to flirt. She wanted to be seen. And strangely, so did he. I'm free Saturday evening, he said finally, 6 p.m. She smiled, slow and victorious. There's a place near St. Xavier's, bitter brew, quiet, good coffee. I'll be there, he said. Without the mask, she teased. His smile, real, visible this time, reached his eyes. Only if you promise not to run. Saturday, Bitter Brew Cafe. Arian arrived 5 minutes early. He didn't recognize himself in the mirror as he passed the glass window. No lab coat, no gloves. Just jeans, a casual shirt, and the shadow of anticipation on his usually guarded face. Avni walked in shortly after, in a navy blue dress with silver earrings and the same sharp gaze. She spotted him, smiled, and slid into the seat across. No mask, I'm impressed. I thought I'd try being human for a change. Their conversation started casually, books, music, food, but slowly, like tea steeping in silence, it deepened. I lost someone 2 years ago, Avni said quietly. Engaged. He cheated, lied for months. I stopped trusting people after that. Arian stirred his coffee. I lost someone too, a younger brother, drunk driving accident. I was supposed to pick him up that night. I was in surgery. Silence stretched between them, warm and understanding. There were no follow-up questions, just the quiet comfort of shared pain. I didn't expect to like you this much, Avni said finally. Neither did I. Outside, the rain had started again. Light this time, barely more than mist. But inside Bitter Brew, the atmosphere was heavy with emotion. When they stepped out together, Ariane offered his umbrella. Avni didn't take it. Instead, she stepped closer and said, Can I do something wildly unprofessional? He raised a brow. Like what? Before he could react, she leaned up and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. For the gentlest dentist I've ever met, she whispered. Arian didn't move, didn't speak, but inside, something cracked open. Something dangerous. Something inevitable. Chapter 3. Beneath the Surface. Monday morning, Aryan walked into his clinic with the memory of Avni's kiss still lingering like a ghost on his cheek. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it had shaken something loose inside him. Something that had been locked away for years. He wasn't used to this. Not the attention. Not the warmth. Not the hope. Meenal, his effervescent receptionist, handed him the schedule for the day, but she paused a moment too long, eyeing him curiously. "You look different," she said. "New shampoo," Aryan replied dryly. Meenal rolled her eyes but didn't press. She knew better than to poke the bear. But she wasn't wrong. He did feel different. Lighter, somehow. The clinic buzzed along with its usual rhythm, cleanings, checkups, follow-ups. But Aryan kept glancing at the clock. Avni wasn't due until Wednesday, but already he was looking forward to seeing her again. Across the city. Avni sat in her faculty office, sipping lukewarm chai, trying to grade papers. But her mind was anywhere but work. She hadn't stopped smiling since Saturday. Her colleagues noticed. Her students noticed. Even the canteen guy asked if something nice had happened. But deep inside, a part of her was wary. Happiness never came without consequences. She had learned that the hard way. She scrolled through her messages. Nothing from her ex, thankfully, but something else caught her eye. A message from an unknown number. "You smile too much these days. Be careful who sees." Her heart stopped. She stared at the screen, fingers frozen. Was this a prank? One of her students messing around? But no, it felt too personal. The wording was too specific. She deleted the message. But the chill stayed. Wednesday clinic. Avni arrived early. Aryan was reviewing an X-ray when Meenal showed her in. "You're early," he said, surprised. "I needed to get out of campus," she replied, dropping her bag in the chair. "And I figured I'd rather stare at your ceiling than my office walls." He studied her closely. She looked off. Paler, restless. "Everything okay?" he asked. Avni hesitated, then nodded quickly. "Yeah, just a weird week." Aryan didn't push. Instead, he focused on the procedure. This was the final phase of the root canal. Cleaning, sealing, restoration. But his hands, so practiced and precise, moved slower today, more aware of her. At one point, their eyes met, and Avni whispered, "I got a strange message." Aryan's brow furrowed behind the mask. "From who?" "No idea, just said I was smiling too much." He paused. Could be a joke. Could be something else. Aryan didn't like the unease in her voice. "Send it to me if it happens again." I deleted it. "Next time, don't." Avni nodded. She liked the way he said it. Calm, firm, protective, like she wasn't alone. Later that evening, Avni walked home instead of taking an auto. The air was cooler than usual, and she needed the time to think. But halfway through the walk she sensed something. Footsteps. Behind her. When she turned around, the road was empty. She picked up her pace, passed a chai stall, crossed 2 alleys. Her pulse quickened, even though everything around her looked normal. Still, the feeling didn't leave her. When she finally reached her apartment gate, she exhaled, heart pounding. She climbed the stairs to her flat and was about to open the door when she noticed it. A piece of paper folded neatly and slid under her doormat. Her breath caught. She picked it up with trembling fingers and unfolded it. "He watches you smile. Let's see how long it lasts." No name, no signature. Just ink and threads. Avni locked the door behind her and pressed her back against it, heart thudding. She didn't know who it was, or why they were watching her. But she knew one thing. She had to tell Aryan. Same night, Aryan's apartment. Arian was halfway through dinner when his phone buzzed. Avni, can we talk? He responded instantly. Arian, of course. Call me? Seconds later, his phone rang. She told him everything, the message, the note, the footsteps. He listened without interrupting, his expression darkening by the second. Do you have a stalker? He asked. Not that I know of.Ix? Wouldn't dare. He's in another city, and he's scared of confrontation. Any students? Arian asked carefully. I don't think so, but I've pissed off a few parents. I teach feminism and free thinking, remember? Arian sighed. You need to be careful. You think I'm overreacting? No, he said firmly. I think you're underreacting. There was silence on the line. Then, I feel safe with you. The words settled between them like a secret wish. I'll come by tomorrow, Arian said. Not as your dentist, as your friend. Avni's voice was softer now. Thank you, Arian. For what? For caring. Thursday evening, Avni's apartment. Arian arrived with takeout and a calm expression that belied the storm brewing in his mind. He didn't like this situation, not one bit. They ate on her balcony, under fairy lights and the distant sound of honking. Arian scanned the surroundings discreetly, noting exits, blind spots, and shadows. Avni was talking, but he was listening with more than just ears. He was protecting her. Well, are you really so silent, Arian? She asked suddenly. He looked at her, eyes unreadable. You want the short version? No, the real one. Arian set his cup down. When I lost my brother, I didn't just lose him. I lost the person I was. I buried myself in work, in precision, in silence, because feeling things hurt too much, because people don't come back. So I stopped letting them in. Avni reached for his hand. You let me in. He didn't answer, but he didn't pull away. And in that moment, she leaned forward, slowly, giving him the chance to retreat. He didn't. Their lips met, not rushed, not desperate, but like two people who had waited long enough to deserve this. It was soft, careful, and laced with everything they hadn't said. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. They didn't need to, but far below, in the shadows near the building's gate, someone stood watching. Wait, smiling. Chapter 4. Unmasking the Fear. Friday morning, Avni's apartment. Avni's hand trembled as she sipped her morning tea. The message. The note. The footsteps. It felt like someone was slowly pulling at the fabric of her life, unthreading everything she had carefully woven together. She had never liked being the center of attention, never liked when people took interest in her personal life. But this was different. This wasn't curiosity. This was something darker. Her phone buzzed. A message from Arian. Arian, how are you this morning? Her thumb hovered over the screen, and she typed and deleted 3 different responses. What could she say? She had to be honest, but she didn't want to scare him, not after last night. Finally, she replied, Avni, still processing. You're right, I can't just brush it off. Arian, good. We need to get to the bottom of this. Keep me updated, okay? She smiled faintly. He was always steady, always reliable. But even Arian's calm demeanor couldn't drown the sense of urgency in her gut. She set the phone aside, her eyes moving to the empty chair where he had sat just a few hours ago. She hadn't imagined it. The way he had looked at her, the way his presence had calmed her, made her feel safe. But now, that same safety felt fragile. Saturday afternoon, Arian's clinic. The clinic was buzzing with activity, But Aryan's mind wasn't on his patience. He checked the time again, just shy of 3:00 p.m. His thoughts kept returning to Avni. The kiss had shaken him more than he had expected. He hadn't let himself feel anything for a long time, hadn't allowed anyone to get close, but with her it felt different. The moment was still too fresh, too raw. Just then, Meenal came in with a file. "Dr. Malhotra, your 3:30 is here." Aryan nodded absently, but before he could turn back to the chart, Meenal hesitated. "Is everything okay, sir? You've been distracted today." "I'm fine," he replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired." She gave him a long look. "You're not the type to get distracted, Aryan. If there's something you need to talk about." He raised a hand, signaling he didn't want to discuss it further. "Let's just get through today. We'll talk later." Meenal nodded, but didn't seem convinced. She walked out, leaving him alone with his thoughts again. Later that evening, Avni's apartment. Avni stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, and she couldn't seem to calm them. She needed answers, needed to know who was behind the messages and the notes. She picked up her phone again and stared at Aryan's last message. It had been a comfort hearing from him, but part of her was still hesitant. She wasn't used to depending on anyone, wasn't used to letting someone in. Still, she knew she had to reach out. "Avni, I'm going to report the messages." "I think it's time." "Aryan, good. I'll be here if you need anything. If it gets worse, I'll come by." Her heart fluttered at the thought of him coming over, but she knew she couldn't rely on him for everything. She had to take control of this, for herself. Sunday, Aryan's apartment. Aryan leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the coffee brewing slowly. He had barely slept the night before, his mind constantly shifting back to Avni and the danger she was in. He wanted to protect her, needed to. He grabbed his phone, fingers hovering over the screen, unsure of what to say. He had told her to report it, but a part of him wanted to go further, wanted to be there for her in person. But was that crossing a line? Was he letting his feelings for her cloud his judgment? As the coffee finished brewing, his phone buzzed again. "Avni, I filed the report, but something doesn't feel right." "I'm scared, Aryan, really scared." His stomach dropped. He set the coffee mug aside and immediately dialed her number. It rang twice before she picked up, her voice shakier than he had ever heard it. "Avni, I did what you said," she whispered, her voice low. "But now I feel like I've made it worse. I don't feel safe in my own home anymore." Aryan's pulse quickened. "I'll be over in 10 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone else." "Okay." 10 minutes later, Avni's apartment. Aryan arrived at her apartment building, his car tires screeching against the wet pavement. He hurried up the stairs, barely pausing to knock on the door before stepping inside. Avni was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with worry. Her apartment was dark, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual. She hadn't been the one to greet him with a smile this time. Instead, her face was tense. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, stepping aside to let him in. "I didn't know who else to turn to." "You did the right thing," Aryan said, his voice firm. "Now let's take a look at everything." He began inspecting the apartment, carefully checking each window and door, making sure everything was locked and secure. There was no sign of forced entry, no indication that anyone had been inside. But Avni's unease was palpable. She hovered nearby, watching him with wide eyes. "Oh, I don't know who this is," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I'm scared." "I'm not leaving," Aryan said simply, his gaze never leaving hers. You're safe now." They didn't speak after that. Aryan stayed close, not because he thought she needed comforting, but because he didn't trust that she was truly safe. A week later, Avni stood in the middle of her classroom, facing a sea of expectant students. She was trying to focus, to give her lecture, but her thoughts kept wandering back to the strange occurrences, the messages, the note, the feeling that someone was still watching her, waiting for the right moment. She had spoken with the police, filed a report, and done everything she could think of, but nothing had been resolved. She was still trapped in her own paranoia. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced down at the notification. "Aryan, how's everything? Any more strange messages?" She felt a wave of relief wash over her just seeing his name. She quickly typed back, "Avni, no messages today, but it's been quiet before. I'm still on edge. Aryan, keep your phone close. If you need me, call." Avni's heart fluttered. She hadn't realized how much she was relying on his calm, steady presence until now. But deep inside, she knew that the danger wasn't over yet. Chapter 5. A thin line between love and fear. Monday morning, Avni's apartment. Avni stared at her phone for what felt like hours. The message from Aryan had brought a wave of comfort, but the unsettling thought of the person who had been threatening her never left her mind. She had tried to convince herself that the silence meant everything was okay, but her instincts were screaming otherwise. After a long breath, she texted back, "Avni, no new messages today, but it's hard to shake the feeling that someone's still watching me. Aryan, trust your instincts. You don't need to be alone in this." It was the same message she had gotten before, the one that made her feel like he understood. But something in her heart was growing anxious. Was she overreacting? Or was something bigger at play? Her phone buzzed again. "Aryan, I'm coming by this evening. Don't argue with me." She chuckled softly, despite herself. If there was one thing about Aryan, it was his determination to protect those he cared about. But this time, it wasn't just protection. It was a promise he had made. One he was beginning to keep. Tuesday, Aryan's clinic. Aryan sat in his office, waiting for the next patient. His mind kept drifting back to Avni. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the look of fear in her eyes. She was trying to be strong, but he could tell the cracks were starting to show. He wasn't sure how long he could stay detached from this. He had tried, but with each passing day, he realized how much he had come to care for her. It was more than just the chemistry they shared, more than just the physical attraction. It was something deeper. And yet, he couldn't let himself be consumed by it. Not yet. Not while there was a threat looming over them both. His phone buzzed. "Meenal, Dr. Malhotra, there's a phone call for you. It's urgent." Aryan frowned. He excused himself and took the call in the hallway. "Hello? Dr. Malhotra, this is Detective Karen from the local precinct. We need to speak with you about an ongoing investigation. Are you available to meet?" Aryan's stomach tightened. "What's this about?" "It's about a recent series of stalking incidents. You may know the victim. A woman named Avni Patel?" The words hit Aryan like a punch to the chest. "I'll be there in an hour," he said quickly, hanging up before he could hear any more details. Later that day, detective's office. Aryan sat across from Detective Karen, the tension in the room palpable. The detective wasn't wasting any time, pulling out a folder full of photographs and notes. "We've been investigating a few incidents lately. It seems like someone's been targeting multiple people in this area. Women, mostly. Avni Patel is one of our primary cases, and we believe the person behind it is getting closer to making a move." Aryan leaned forward. "What does that mean? Is she in immediate danger?" "We've connected the threats to a pattern," Detective Karan said, flipping through the folder. They're escalating. The messages, the notes, the strange phone calls. We've traced one of the messages to a burner phone, but we haven't been able to pinpoint the suspect yet. Arian's fists clenched. I need to know what you're doing to protect her. We're working on it, but she may be safer with you right now, Karan said, glancing up from the folder. You've been close to her lately, haven't you? Arian nodded, his mind already racing. What do you suggest? We'll have someone follow her for now, but I need you to keep her close, watch her, and if anything happens, report it immediately. Arian stood up. I will. Tuesday evening, Avni's apartment. Avni opened the door to find Aryan standing there, a concerned look on his face. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Did you eat dinner? He asked as he looked around the apartment, scanning the room as if expecting someone to be hiding in the corners. I'm fine, Avni replied, her voice a little too sharp. I can take care of myself, Aryan. You don't need to babysit me. Aryan looked at her, his eyes softening. I know you're strong, but I don't trust anyone to protect you but me. She sighed, leaning against the counter. I don't need your protection, Aryan. I've got this. He moved toward her, his gaze intense. I'm not here to control you, Avni. I'm here because I care. I don't want you to face this alone. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked up at him, his face so close to hers. She could feel the heat radiating from him. It was too much. His presence, his care, the unspoken connection that lingered between them. The silence stretched on, both of them caught in the weight of their emotions. Avni wanted to pull away, wanted to tell him she didn't need him, that she was fine. But the truth was, she was terrified. And Aryan had become her anchor in this storm. I don't want to lose you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You won't, he replied, his hand reaching up to gently tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. He didn't need to say more. She could feel it in the way he looked at her, the way his hand lingered just a fraction too long against her cheek. And then, before either of them could stop it, their lips met. It was a kiss of desperation, fueled by the fear and the longing that had built between them. It was slow at first, hesitant, as though they were both testing the waters, but soon it deepened, the connection between them undeniable. When they finally pulled apart, neither of them spoke, but the unspoken truth hung in the air. There was no turning back now. Later that night, Avni's apartment. As the night grew late, Aryan stayed by Avni's side, watching her carefully, as if any moment something would happen. But the hours passed quietly, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustling of Avni shifting on the couch. She had fallen asleep, curled up in a blanket. Aryan sat nearby, never taking his eyes off her, his thoughts racing. He couldn't protect her from everything. He knew that. But he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. And if the person behind the threats was closer than they thought, Aryan wasn't going to let them get any closer. Chapter 6. A Step Closer to the Darkness. Wednesday morning, Avni's apartment. Avni woke with a start, the remnants of the dream still clinging to her mind. The dream had been terrifying. Someone in the shadows, watching her. She couldn't see their face, but the suffocating presence was unmistakable. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding, and looked around the room. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Aryan had stayed the night, sitting in the chair by the window while she slept on the couch, but now the chair was empty. A chill ran down her spine. She grabbed her phone from the coffee table, her fingers trembling as she unlocked it. No messages from Aryan. Her heart skipped. He'd been gone for hours. Why didn't he wake her? Had something happened? Just as panic was beginning to set in, the front door creaked open. Ariane stepped inside, his eyes immediately locking onto hers. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice filled with concern. "I didn't want to wake you." Avni exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Where did you go? I woke up and you were gone." "I just needed some air," Ariane said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I had some things to clear my head." Avni could feel the tension radiating off him. "Are you okay?" He hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking toward the door, then back to her. "I'm fine, just trying to figure out what we're dealing with." "I know," she said softly, standing up and moving toward him. "I've been thinking about it too. Something feels off. I can't shake the feeling that we're not looking in the right direction." Arian stepped closer, his voice steady but low. "I think we're getting closer, but we have to be careful. Whoever is doing this is watching, waiting for us to slip up." Avni swallowed. She hadn't realized how much danger they were truly in until Arian had said that. It wasn't just her life on the line anymore. It was his too. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. "You're not alone in this. I won't let anything happen to you." She nodded, but a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that they were too late, that the danger was already much closer than they realized. Wednesday afternoon, Ariane's clinic. Ariane sat in his office, staring at the file in front of him. The case file on Avni's stalker had been handed over to him by the detective, but there were still too many unknowns, too many variables. The messages, the notes, the phone calls. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces. "Dr. Malhotra." Minal's voice broke his focus. She stood in the doorway, holding a stack of patient files. "Your 2:00 is here. Are you okay? You've been distant all morning." He smiled faintly. "I'm fine, just thinking." She eyed him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, just let me know if you need anything." As she left, Ariane's phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from the detective. "Detective Karen, we've identified the burner phone number that was used to send the threatening messages to Avni. We're running the data now. Should have something soon." Ariane stared at the message for a long moment. Then his phone buzzed again. "Avni, I'm starting to feel like I'm losing control. I can't even walk to the corner store without looking over my shoulder. I don't know how much longer I can handle this." Ariane's heart tightened. He quickly typed a response. "Hey Ryan, I know, but we're closer than we've ever been. Don't let fear control you. I'm right here." He hit send and leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. They were getting closer, but the fear of losing her, of something happening to Avni, had already started to consume him. Thursday night, Avni's apartment. Avni paced the living room, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and anxiety. She couldn't sit still anymore. Every sound, every movement felt like an intrusion. She couldn't relax, couldn't focus. The danger felt so close now, as though it were breathing down her neck. Her phone buzzed again. "Ariane, I'm coming over. Don't try to handle this alone." She smiled faintly at his words, even though a part of her felt like she should be the strong one. She didn't want to rely on anyone. But the truth was, Ariane had become her rock, her safe place in this storm of uncertainty. The doorbell rang, and she didn't hesitate before rushing to answer it. Ariane stood in the doorway, a concerned expression on his face. His eyes scanned her immediately, noting the tension in her posture, the way she wouldn't meet his gaze. "Avni," he said softly, stepping inside. "You're not okay." She wanted to deny it, wanted to say that she was fine, but she couldn't. She wasn't fine. "I can't do this anymore, Ariane," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm scared all the time. I feel like I'm losing myself." Without thinking, Aryan pulled her into his arms. The warmth of his embrace, the solidness of his presence, grounded her in a way nothing else could. "You're not alone," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "I'm not going anywhere." She closed her eyes, leaning into him. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a sense of relief. But deep down, a voice told her that this calm wouldn't last. Friday morning, Aryan's clinic. The next morning, Aryan sat across from Detective Karen in a small, dimly lit room at the precinct. They had met early, hoping to discuss the latest findings on the case. "We traced the burner phone," Karan began, flipping through the pages of his notes. "It was registered to a local pay-as-you-go account. The person who purchased it used an alias, but we've found a connection to a man named Ravi Kapoor." Aryan's blood ran cold. Ravi Kapoor. He had heard that name before. It was the name of a disgruntled patient who had been banned from his clinic months ago for threatening another doctor. "What's his connection to Avni?" Aryan asked, leaning forward. "We're still trying to connect the dots," Karen said. "But it's possible that Kapoor has been watching her for some time now. We're digging deeper into his background." Aryan clenched his fists. "How do we stop him?" Karen met his gaze. "We'll find him, but we need more time. I suggest you stay with her. Keep a close eye on her for now." Aryan didn't need to hear more. He was already out the door, his mind racing. Later that night, Avni's apartment. When Aryan arrived at Avni's apartment, he found her standing by the window, her gaze distant and filled with uncertainty. "Avni," he said softly, stepping up behind her. She turned, her face pale. "I don't know it's real anymore. I keep thinking I'm seeing things, hearing things, but I can't escape this feeling that something bad is about to happen." Aryan took her hands in his, holding them firmly. "It's not just in your head. We're closer than we've ever been to finding the person behind all this. We're going to stop him, Avni, I swear." Her eyes searched his, and in that moment she believed him. But the fear remained, lurking just beneath the surface.